Hi, my name is Amy. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making a bum roll to go with my new 18th century middling merchant class ensemble. I used cotton batiste for my bum roll, and it took me about 4 hours today, including drafting the pattern and making a mock-up. So this is the finished bum roll, and let's get started.
To make the pattern for this bum roll, I first took my waist measurement and divided it in half so I knew how big the inner diameter of the bum roll needed to be. The second thing I did was took a wad of tin foil and wrote it up into a snake type shape, and then I used it to define the shape of my waist, which is how I got the shape of the inner diameter for the pattern. After that, I just arbitrarily decided how wide I wanted the bum roll to be in the back, and I tapered it to a point in the front. Then I cut out my mock-up and sewed it together. And in sewing it together, I sewed the whole thing together except for a gap, which I used to fill it with stuffing. Don't hate me for how much fabric I waste right here. Technically, I'm not wasting it because it goes in my cabbage patch, but there's a lot of usable fabric there. I also usually prefer to cut with a rotary cutter on my other cutting mat, which is magnetic, and I use magnets instead of pins. But I wanted to be able to do all this work at my sewing table, so I elected to use pins and scissors for this project. I don't have a very big cabbage patch, and in all fairness, it is mostly full of knit fabric that isn't all natural. It has a lot of polyester and spandex in it. So I used some polyfiber fill that I had in my stash to fill my bum roll with instead of chopped up cabbage. On the mock-up, I just used a whip stitch to close the opening. On the final version, though, I used a ladder stitch, so these stitches were a lot nicer and neater. I also took much smaller stitches. The other change I made on the final version was that I left the opening on the outside of the bum roll instead of on this inside corner because it was much easier to close. So you can kind of tell already that the front edges are overlapping, and I ended up taking about 5 inches off the front edge of each side before I made the final version.
I'm not sure. Let me rephrase that. I'm not positive this is going to require alteration once I put it on, but I think I'm going to end up altering the pattern so that these ends are cut off, and that's where I can attach the ties. I'm going to try it on without my stays because I want to be able to wear it with other costumes as well, and my stays don't give me a huge amount of reduction, so the inside diameter isn't going to change that much. So this is about where I'll end up wearing it. And I think I will cut it off right about here on each side. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So, mock-up is done. And quickly I'll mark where I'm going to cut these off, mark it on the pattern, and then it'll be time to start the act.
So here I'm pinning the final version together, and on this version I added straps to the front so it could be tied around the waist. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice that right here I'm making a huge mistake. I, of course, didn't realize it until I already had the whole sewn together, but maybe you know what I'm talking about. At any rate, I was pinning the straps out of the way so they didn't get stuck in the stitching going around the bum roll. And like I stated before, on this version, I left the opening for turning and stuffing on the outside circle instead of on the inside circle. I kind of wish I could sew this fast in real life. I'd get a lot done. Once it's sewn together, you need to clip the curves for turning. And right here is where I realized my mistake. The straps should have been sandwiched between the two layers, not on the top of the layer. It was a relatively easy fix. I just unpicked the seam right there, fed the straps in through the turning opening, and then restitched several inches. This probably would have been a little bit easier as well if I would have added a safety pin to the end to feed it up through the fabric with, but I was being impatient and I was frustrated with myself for making this mistake. Once it's fed through, I just pinned it in place and then restitched it. On to the second side. Here I am restitching the area where the straps are. I went ahead and stitched about 3 inches direction just to make sure that the straps were secured. Now that I have that little mistake corrected, I went ahead and clipped into the seam on the outside corner. I did not clip the seam on the opening because I knew I would need that extra fabric there to sew it closed with. Now we turn it right side out. Like I said, I stuffed the bumroll using polyfiber fill I've had in my stash for years. It's been used for everything from Christmas snow to stuffing stuffed animals, you name it. I was really surprised at the amount of stuffing the bumroll took, way more than I expected. But I also stuffed it so that it was relatively solid. Right here, I am having to restitch the seam on the inside because I accidentally split it when I was stuffing the roll. For this, I'm just using a ladder stitch, following the stitch lines left by my machine. I really like the ladder stitch for hidden, even though the stitches are somewhat visible, they're so tiny that you really have to look for them, and it can be basically an invisible finish. To make the straps, I just used 2 lengths of fabric. I folded them in half and sewed them in a tube, then turned it right side out and pressed it flat. I don't remember the exact length I used, but I think each strap is about the length of my waist. I know they're way longer than they need to be. I will be shortening them soon. After fixing the split open spots, the last thing I did was add the rest of the fiber fill. Luckily or unluckily, however you want to look at it, I have a ton of this fiber fill, so it's going to take forever to use. Once I got it completely stuffed, I started manipulating the opening so that I could close it. And I'm kind of having to muscle it into place. Sorry, I'm out of frame here. Then I stitched it closed, like I said, using a ladder stitch. I'm not sure where that footage went either. And this is the final bum roll.
So this is the finished bum roll. I'm not putting it on over my stays because I don't have the ties for the stays yet, but this is the close to the correct measurement for them. Yeah, turned out good. I'm excited because now I can take measurements and start my petticoat. Thank you for joining me today. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And if you feel like it, hit the little bell so that YouTube notifies you the next time I upload a video. Have a great day.